Hello everybody and welcome here to my official Premier League predictions video is out for Matchday 36 on this video. We'll start things first for tomorrow's game at 12:30 between Liverpool and Chelsea on tomorrow's matchup. Big game for Chelsea because they are need to get some wins from now until the end of the season for any chance, maybe, possibility, they might come sixth. And if Villa win the Europa League, they can still guarantee Champions League football. But they are 4 points behind where Bournemouth are currently at in 6th position, as they are 9th position in the league, and they need to get some wins ASAP. The big problem is they've got a caretaker boss, McFarlane, is taked over Chelsea until the end of the season. They're in the FA Cup final against Man City. Well, doubtable Man City is going to win next week, the FA Cup final over Chelsea. But that'll be a very interesting game for Chelsea to try and pick up silverware, maybe. Maybe potentially they might win the FA Cup and get into the Europa League through there. But talking about this matchup here with Liverpool as well, especially, they obviously need to guarantee Champions League football because they did lose 3-2 last weekend to Manchester United on Sunday. And they've got to get one more win anyway at Liverpool, and then they're safe to be in European football, the Champions League for next season. So they've got to get one more win, hopefully, for tomorrow to guarantee that spot. In my honest prediction between Liverpool and Chelsea, I think the score's going to be a win for Liverpool. I think they'll probably definitely go out and win the game at Anfield. I'm going to go 3-1 as my score prediction. I think Chelsea will get a goal, but I think Liverpool will really be the team, will be the better ones compared to Chelsea on the day. Because on Sunday, they lost to United. Anfield makes sense to get a victory over the team who is very vulnerable with no permanent manager in charge of Chelsea. And they're all over the place. Even lost 3-1 to Nottingham Forest at Stamford Bridge from Monday's game. So they're in a bad position. I think Liverpool will go and guarantee the 3 points. So I'm going to go 3-1 to Liverpool. Now we move on now to our next game. It's Brighton Hove Albion versus Wolves. Wolves already relegated already. Brighton, however, have got a chance on sniffing in that Champions League places, hopefully, by this next season, if they can do it. Obviously, Thomas Herzog has signed a contract to stay at Brighton for another 2 years. Was a very, very good to see that him to stay his loyalty at Brighton, because big clubs might sniff managers like Thomas Herzog. Look what happened to Graham Potter. Look what happened to De Zerbi. You know, those guys were good coaches and they left. And they went for the bigger teams they went for. So in this game here for Brighton and also for Wolves, I do think that they have got no excuses, Brighton, to not win this game. And they've got maybe a chance to qualify for the Champions League if Villa win the Europa League, though. Or they could really chase on Villa in the league. But it's not really likely to happen because the points are a little bit of a gap between Brighton and Villa. But I do think Brighton's going to get a result. I think it's going to be 2-0 on the scoreline for Brighton. I think they'll be the ones who will pick up 2 goals and guarantee 3 points. And that'll be a big win for them going into the end of this weekend's match. Now we move on now to our next game here. We do have is Fulham versus Bournemouth. The Cherries of Bournemouth is very, very huge for them to go and hopefully pick up a win against Fulham, though, because they're in 6th position in the league. Like I said before about Brighton and also about Chelsea as well, they are all fighting for a chance of getting 6th position in the league, because if Villa win the Europa League, I said before, that might be a chance for Bournemouth, a little Bournemouth, to qualify for the Champions League, their first ever European competition to ever play for. It'll be massive achievement for Bournemouth if they can do that. Their first ever European moment will be at the Champions League rather than playing in the Europa League or the Conference League. They do play against Fulham, also in the same familiar battle with Bournemouth to try and qualify for European football, and they're in that race as well. It'll be very important to see who will come out as the winner of that matchup for tomorrow. It'll be a tight game though. I don't think it's gonna be very tight between Fulham at Craven Cottage to play Bournemouth for tomorrow. So if I've got to put a score prediction between Fulham and Bournemouth, I'm going to go for a draw. and I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I think Bournemouth obviously are a good side. We know that they're a good quality team this season. I can see that, obviously when they lost Semenyo in January, they still picked up good form, and they still picked up, really climbed up the table from January all the way to now. Into sixth position is big, and there's a chance then to try and get into to qualify for European football. And I think drawing for Fulham makes a lot of sense, because Fulham's also in a fight themselves to try and get into those European places like Bournemouth. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw as my score prediction for Saturday. Now we move on now to my score prediction between Sunderland and Manchester United. Well, big win for Man United from Sunday. They have now confirmed themselves to qualify now for next season in the UEFA Champions League after 2 years away from that competition when Erik ten Hag was manager at Man United. They actually got knocked out in the group stages of the old format of the Champions League, and they got knocked out at that time. And it was a big, 2 years away from it is massive for Man United, of course. To miss out Champions League for 2 seasons, it's going to affect them financially as well. And they've obviously, Bruno Fernandes stayed loyal to Man United, even though they had no Champions League football to play for. He's quite loyal to the team, and a couple of players, Man United as well, have been really kept believing they can stay at Man United and try and climb up to a good position at the moment. Like Harry Maguire, for example, as well, stay loyal to Manchester United also. So they've got, so these players still want to, really help Man United to get back where they belong in that Champions League position. They do play Sunderland though, and I think the gas will be really less on Man United, I think, because they've got nothing to play for now, Man United. They've got nothing to play for. Sunderland have got a lot to play for, because they also got a chance on climbing up the table as well in those European places. So this game for Sunderland means the most compared to Manchester United. Michael Carrick's done a very good job at Man United to get them to qualify for the Champions League for next season. They've got nothing to play for now, from now until Matchday 38 in 2 games from now after. So in this matchup here at the Stadium of Light Stadium, and since Sunderland are in very good form throughout this season as well, in their first season back in the top flight, I think Sunderland will beat Manchester United 1-0. That's it. You heard it right there. 1-0 to Sunderland. I think they're going to be the real proper fighters in this matchup at home. And I think they'll get themselves that big 1-goal victory over Man United to get themselves up the table and also try and qualify for European football. So I'm going to go 1-0 to Sunderland against Manchester United. Interesting game for Manchester City. They go and play against Brentford. Well, Man City dropped points to Everton on Monday. 3-3 the score. And now Arsenal, all they've got to do now is win all of our matches, and then we won the league, only by 2-point gap between us and Man City. I think this is a very, very important game for Man City. They're at home as well. Brentford, they've got a lot to play for also, because they've got the 6th position to fight for, and also the top 5. They can get into the Champions League positions. They're still in a fight for that European football for next season, for the first time in their history, actually, for Brentford to qualify for European competition. If they do that, obviously, hopefully, by next season. So it's a very interesting game, though. Brentford do play good football, though. They did beat and fly against West Ham. West Ham had a lot to fight for from last week. They actually beat them 3-0, but they had a lot to fight for, West Ham, to try and be safe from relegation. And they actually really floored them in that matchup from last Saturday. But with Man City are at home, they've got a lot to play for, though. They have to go and pick up something in this matchup for the evening's game. So I'm going to go for Man City to win the game 2-1. I think Brentford will be the ones leading the matchup, but I think Man City will score 2 goals and they'll get 3 points over Brentford. So I'm going to go 2-1, my score prediction between Man City and Brentford. Now we move on now to my score prediction between Burnley and Aston Villa. Well, Burnley, nothing to play for now, relegated. They've got Michael Jackson, the caretaker boss, in charge. Villa done well to get into the Europa League final. They beat Nottingham Forest 4-0 last night. 4-0. Big win for Aston Villa and for Unai Emery. The team really played together, really got back from being behind 1-0 in the first leg and come back and win 4-0 against Nottingham Forest in the second leg at Villa Park was massive. And they do play Freiburg on the 20th of May. This game here for Villa, they do play Burnley. Burnley got nothing to play for. Villa do have something to play for more, but not as much, because I think that Villa's the big favourites to go and win the Europa League. So I wouldn't say that Unai Emery is going to be more focused on the league as such, because I think he knows that a trophy matters the most more than qualifying for the Champions League. I think they probably will still qualify, though, because the points are a little bit of a gap between Villa and Bournemouth. So I do think Villa's going to get that European spot anyways. But they got nothing to play for, Villa. Nothing to play for. But I do think Villa will get a win, I think, on Sunday. It will be a narrow win, I think, is going to be for them. And I think that with John McGinn, did very, very well from last night. And also Buendia as well. Play some good football at Villa Park. I think maybe John McGinn will be on the score sheet for Aston Villa. And I think that'll be a narrow win for Villa to try and get themselves a massive cushion to try and qualify for the Champions League. So I'm going to go for a win for Villa. Burnley 0, Villa 1. My final score prediction on Matchday 36. Now we move on now to Crystal Palace and Everton. This is a very, very important matchup, by the way, for both sides. For Everton, however, we know this is a very, very big match for them because they've got also European football to fight for. Palace did very well on Thursday. From like yesterday, they actually beat Shakhtar Donetsk in the Europa Conference League. They've got that to think about the most, more than the league now. Palace still are not mathematically safe from relegation. Only one more point can do for Palace to secure safety for next season. We all know that Palace are going to be safe anyway, so 1 point is enough for them to, from now until matchday 38, to survive. They could still be in the mix, though, in that relegation battle, so it's not likely, but they could lose the gas a little bit, and then Spurs and West Ham might get some wins in their games to really put the pressure on Forest maybe, and also for Palace also. But they're safe anyways, we all know that. But they do play against Everton, though. Also got a lot to fight for against Palace to try and get into that European spot in their new stadium as well this season. And away from home, they're very, very good. At home, not as great, but a good draw at home on Monday to Man City. 3-3 the scoreline was for Everton. But they do play away from home. They love playing away from home. And I think they're going to get some goals in this matchup. And I think Palace will lose a little bit of the gas in this matchup due to the fact that they've got a Europa League preparation to think about. And they know by points, compared to where West Ham are, they've got enough to stay up. All they've got to do is one more point and they're up and they're safe mathematically. So I think that Palace will lose to Everton. I think Everton will go to Selhurst Park with 3 points. I'm going to go for David Moyes' team to go and beat Palace 2-1, I think, for Everton. I think Everton will be the ones who will pick up those big 3 points. And there'll be a little bit more pressure now on the other teams above Everton to get results in their games, because there's a chance that Everton could play European football. Now we move on now to my next predictions, or the score predictions of the Premier League for Matchday 36. It's Nottingham Forest, who got knocked out of the Europa League on yesterday's game at Villa Park over Aston Villa. Forest, who play at home to Newcastle. They are not out of the woods just yet, though, for Forest. And I think they might be disappointed not to go through to the final of the Europa League, but all they've got to focus on now is to get one more win and they're mathematically safe. That's all they've got to worry about, Forest. And I think they will do it. Forest are a good side, very good side. Newcastle have not been great this season. We all know that, as a matter of fact. They've not been looking good. They did beat Brighton last week, they did, but they are not looking good this season. They should be challenging in the top half of the table, challenging into that Champions League positions again, maybe so, or maybe a Europa League or whatnot. But Newcastle not been the team as they have been in the last 3 or 4 seasons under Eddie Howe. But with Forest, though, are also got now nothing to think about now of any competition to play for. They've got now the Premier League to focus on to wrap up the season. I think Forest will go for the win on Newcastle for Sunday's game. I think that Newcastle, they've obviously got nothing to play for. Forest have a little bit to play for still on safety. Did very well by beating Chelsea 3-1 on Monday. And I think this one more win for Forest will be them safe. And they've had a very, very, ups and downs season. In one season, having 4 managers appointed for Forest. And no team who gets 4 managers in one season keeps the team in the league. I think the players have done very, very well, contributed to the team very, very well to keep this Forest team in the Premier League. And that's the players, the quality they've got in their team. And they can adapt to coaches very, very quickly. And they've really handled it quite nicely by 4 managers in one season and still safe to play in the Premier League. So I do think this win against Newcastle will happen. They've got that to think about now. I'm going to go 2-1 for Nottingham Forest for the game at the City Ground for Sunday. Now we move on to our next matchup. It is a big game. It's more like a risk taker, really, between us and West Ham, Arsenal and West Ham. Because West Ham, I hope they actually survive this season, though, because Spurs are in a race to go down to the Championship. But for West Ham United, however, they're only 1 point behind now. They lost 3-0 to Brentford last week. They're going to raise our game to Arsenal on Sunday. They're going to really play a good football. They are fighting for their lives, West Ham United now. They're in big trouble. And I think this is not going to be an easy game for us at all. Plus, we might have won in the Champions League from Tuesday by knocking out Atletico Madrid to get ourselves into the final at Budapest. And also we've got the league to win for also. And I think we'll probably win the league still, because Man City are not the team as they were before. And I think that we've got enough points, I think, to be the ones to go and win the Premiership, though, despite, Man City beating us a few weeks ago and they were above us on goal difference. But that draw to Everton really helped. So we have to raise our game also to West Ham United. It's going to be a very gamble match because I want West Ham to beat us to try and send Spurs down, because the Spurs are too entitled football club they are. Thinking they're too big in London. But on the other hand, we need to beat West Ham to go and win the league. So there's both in my mind here what's going to happen, because both scenarios, I'm really fancy us doing. Losing to West Ham, drawing to West Ham, or even beating West Ham, because anything will be our day. As long as Spurs get relegated, I'll be very happy. But I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think West Ham will show a fight, though, against Arsenal. And I do think we might narrowly beat them, I think. I think narrowly. We have to beat them, because if we do beat West Ham on Sunday, we've won the league. We've got to play Burnley as well on Monday next week. And they've got to play Palace also. Is a game they're in a vacation now to play in the Conference League final in a couple of days after. So I think this game's going to be very important, and I think we'll do scrape a victory over West Ham. I think West Ham will score, and I think Arsenal score 2 goals. So the score prediction between West Ham and Arsenal is West Ham 1, Arsenal 2, as my official score prediction on Matchday 36, and we'll be the ones more likely now to go win that Premier League trophy. I'm going 2-1 to Arsenal. Now we move on now to our last matchup here on Matchday 36. It's Tottenham Hotspur versus Leeds United. Well, Leeds, we know that for them, they're safe. Definitely safe, mathematically. I think it's not confirmed yet, but it's more likely now because they're up the table now. They're up 14th in the league, and they've done very, very well, Leeds. Not, it doesn't matter about the FA Cup defeat to Chelsea, but in the league, we all thought that Leeds will be fighting for relegation throughout the whole. I think they did that during this season as well under Daniel Farker, but they've been a good side. They've been Leeds, and they do play away from home to Tottenham. Spurs are outside the relegation zone, unfortunately, by beating Villa 2-0 from Sunday's matchup. So they're above West Ham, and they could be safe, though, Spurs. Even though they had a very dipsy, poor season, they are outside the relegation drop. And all the Spurs have got to do now is win their matches and hope for West Ham not to win their matches for the next 3 games. But Tottenham's home form this season has been shocking. Very, 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 very shocking. The last home win was way back in December against Brentford. I think they beat them like 1-0, I think the score was. And since then, they haven't beat any team at home since. They've beaten Villa away. They beat Wolves away. Maybe back-to-back wins could happen for the game on Monday. Leeds, however, they've got nothing much to play for much. They could still want to try and give it a good ending to the season. May want to pick up more points from now until the end of the season, and that could still happen. But if I got to put a score prediction in this match, it'll be a very tough one though, because Leeds are a good side though, and even away from home, they're pretty good as well this season. And even Spurs love to jinx things, don't they? They like to have a good moment by doing well in games, and then all of a sudden they capitulate a few games as well. And I can see them capitulating against Leeds on Monday. I don't think Leeds will beat Spurs, but I think Leeds will get a draw over Spurs. So my score prediction between Tottenham and Leeds, I'm going to go 2-2 as my score prediction. Spurs will score goals, and I think Leeds will score goals, but I think this game will come down to a draw on Monday's game. So I'm going to go 2-2 between the Spurs and Leeds on Monday's match. That's all we have time for, guys, for the Premier League predictions for Matchday 36. And if you like my YouTube video, my predictions every single week, go and give me a subscribe on my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys soon with some more predictions for next week for Matchday 37. Have a good weekend.